What do you give a man who has everything? In Hitler's case, it was this, the mighty Tiger tank, unveiled on his 53rd birthday in April 1942. And on the Führer's directive, it was to be bigger, heavier, and more powerful than any tank ever built before. The Tiger was 56 tons and equipped with the biggest gun to be fitted to a mass-produced tank at the time. With its sheer size and devastating firepower, it soon took on mythical status amongst enemy Allied crews.
I looked upon it as something indestructible, and if it was everywhere you went, if you passed a wood on your flank, say 1,000 yards away, you'd wonder what was lurking in there.
The fact was, it was a Tiger which was dominant in crews' minds. I'm sure people saw Tigers when they were there.
If he sees you, you haven't got a chance, have you? If you see him, you still haven't got a chance.
To create the Tiger, the Germans shoehorned their highly successful 88mm anti-aircraft gun into an armored body to produce an awesome tank-killing package. However, the Sherman wasn't primarily designed to be a tank killer, as its smaller diameter, quick-loading artillery gun made it ideal for infantry support roles. And that's why there was an enormous disparity in size and power between the two tanks' guns, not to mention the rounds they fired. Just look at these shells. This is the 75mm diameter round of the Sherman. Okay, that looks pretty scary, but take a look at this monster. This is the 88mm round that the Tiger fired. The damage caused by one of these was absolutely devastating. In short, the Tiger's gun was bigger and more powerful in every way, capable of destroying a Sherman at 1,500 meters. A Sherman's gun would have absolutely no impact at anything over 300 meters and would have to get within a 60-meter range to have a real chance of taking out the Tiger. There was no greater example of the Tiger's superior firepower than at the Battle of Goodwood, 6 weeks after the D-Day landings. Perched on a hill overlooking the advancing Allies, the Germans' 88s destroyed a staggering 400 Shermans before they could get close enough to fire a shot on target. These men were there, on opposite sides, Ken Tout in a Sherman and Heinz Bleidiesel in a Tiger. Over the 2 days of carnage, Heinz's Tiger troop wiped out at least a dozen Shermans.
20 to 25 Shermans appeared, and we started to fire when the range was optimal, and every round hit a Sherman and they went up in flames.
Yes.
In a few minutes, it took us 30 minutes for 12 Shermans, and the other 2 had bailed out, they were undamaged.
Just as important as firepower was a tank's armor, and the Tiger had a head start here too, as military vehicle specialist Tony Lawrence explains.
The armour of the Tiger varied in thickness depending on what part of the tank. The frontal armour was up to about 4 inches thick, the side armour less, and the turret armour less. Even so, the frontal armour was impervious to pretty well anything that the Allies could throw at it. Really, the Tiger was a mobile pillbox.
To keep the Sherman lighter, the Americans used much thinner armor. In fact, almost half the thickness of the Tigers. To show the difference this makes, we've come to an ordnance testing range on Salisbury Plain. We've set up an experiment to replicate the effects of a direct hit from an 88mm round on the 2-inch thick side armor plating of a Sherman tank. But the real story is the potential damage to the crew inside, represented by these targets. We've also set up high-speed video cameras to record the impact and show how well the armor stands up to the modern equivalent of a Tiger's deadly firepower. Take a look at this.
Confirm range clear all round. Wakefield Road, video ready.
Stand by. 3, 2, 1.
Yeah, the effects are devastating. The armor plating's just too thin to withstand the awesome power from an armor-piercing round fired from a gun like the Tiger's 88. It's punched straight through. And as for the crew, the high explosive and metal have sliced right through the crew and out the other side. Tiger tanks mainly fired armor-piercing shells, which would penetrate the skin of the Sherman. Then, a hard metal core would bounce around the interior, slicing through anything in its path. In other words, the Sherman crew. The chances of surviving an impact like this during the Second World War were practically nil.
We were advancing through an orchard, but when we got to the edge of the orchard, I heard a gun was firing, which sounded like an 88, and I looked across about sort of 200 yards, and I could see a gun. Suddenly the camouflage came off it a bit, and they were firing at someone else's tank, possibly Nobby's or the other one next to it. I sort of came a bit out of the trees, and then I could see that the gun was beginning to swivel around towards us, and of course, eventually, it was facing directly at our tank. We were sort of looking down the muzzle. And the next minute it fired and struck our tank up just above the right track. As it entered the tank, first thing I noticed was the shaft was light as it had punched through, and it was an almighty bang, as you may imagine. That was about, I suppose, this much from me, about a yard across the tank, and only about a foot from the co-driver. It struck the ammunition bin, went white hot, and then it shot out underneath and broke the track. But we all got out and we all survived.
Yeah.
Extremely lucky. Must have been our lucky day.